The Moon is Earth's only natural satellite and the fifth largest satellite in the solar system. The Moon has no atmosphere, which means there's no weather and no wind to erode the surface. The term blue moon doesn't refer to the moon's color, but means a second full moon within a single calendar month. The moon's surface is covered with a fine, dusty material called regolith, formed by billions of years of meteorite impacts. Apollo 11 astronauts placed a reflective panel on the moon's surface to measure its distance from Earth using lasers. The moon's diameter is about 1/4 that of Earth, measuring approximately 474 kilometers. The moon is about 400 kilometers. It's 855 miles away from Earth on average, roughly the distance you could cover driving around the Earth 10 times. The moon doesn't shine. It reflects sunlight. Only about 1% of the sunlight that hits the moon is reflected back to Earth. The dark spots visible on the moon are called maria, vast plains formed by ancient volcanic activity. The term lunatic comes from the Latin word luna, as people once believed the moon influenced mental health. The moon's visibility in the sky changes depending on the time of year, location, and phase. The moon has a weak magnetic field, only about 10^100th the strength of Earth's magnetic field. Moon dust smells like gunpowder, according to astronauts who walked on its surface during Apollo missions. There are over 200 craters on the moon, named after notable scientists, astronomers, and mathematicians. The moon is slowly drifting away from Earth at a rate of about 3.8 centimeters per year. The far side of the moon is not always dark. It gets as much sunlight as the side facing Earth. The moon's gravitational pull creates Earth's tides by pulling on the water in oceans and seas. A full moon occurs roughly every 29.5 days, a period called a lunar month. The moon's gravity is about 1/6 that of Earth, making everything weigh much less on its surface. The moon has quakes called muonquakes, which are weaker than earthquakes, but can last much longer due to the moon's rigid crust. The moon's core is partially molten, like Earth's, though much smaller in size. Only 12 people have walked on the moon, all during NASA's Apollo missions between 1969 and 1972. Neil Armstrong's first words on the moon were, "That's one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind." The moon has been hit by countless meteoroids, creating craters like the famous Tycho crater. The moon's largest crater, the South Pole Aitken Basin, is about 500 kilometers in diameter and 13 kilometers deep. The Soviet Luna 2 was the first human-made object to impact the moon in 1959. A total lunar eclipse occurs when the Earth casts its shadow on the moon, giving it a reddish hue, often called a blood moon. The moon's orbit is slightly elliptical, which is why its apparent size changes when viewed from Earth. During a supermoon, the moon appears up to 14% larger and 30% brighter than when it's at its farthest point. The term harvest moon refers to the full moon closest to the autumnal equinox. The moon's poles have craters that are permanently shadowed, where ice has been found. The moon has no liquid water, but frozen water exists in shadowed craters near its poles. The phrase, "once in a blue moon," refers to something very rare, as blue moons happen approximately every 2.5 years. The moon's surface temperature varies dramatically from 127 degrees C, 603 F, in sunlight to 173 C, 280 F Su, in shadow. The moon rotates at the same rate it orbits Earth, causing the same side to always face us. This is called synchronous rotation. Galileo was one of the first astronomers to observe the moon through a telescope, noting its craters and mountains. Ancient cultures used the moon to create calendars, such as the Islamic and Chinese lunar calendars. Buzz Aldrin was the second man to walk on the moon, following Neil Armstrong during the Apollo 11 mission. The moon's low gravity would allow a person to jump about 6 times higher than on Earth. The moon's maria are mostly basalt, a type of volcanic rock formed from ancient lava flows. The moon's crust is much thicker on its far side than the side facing Earth. The moon's orbit is tilted by about 5 degrees relative to Earth's orbit around the sun, which is why eclipses don't happen every month. The moon has no global magnetic field, but some lunar rocks are magnetized, indicating a past magnetic field. Lunar dust is extremely fine and abrasive, making it difficult to clean off spacesuits and equipment. The moon is geologically inactive, meaning there are no active volcanoes or tectonic plate movements. The moon once had volcanic activity, which ended about 1 billion years ago. The Moon is 81 times less massive than Earth. A micromoon occurs when a full moon coincides with its farthest point from Earth in its orbit. The moon influences animal behavior, such as nocturnal hunting and breeding cycles in certain species. Some ancient civilizations believed the moon was a deity or the home of gods. The first words spoken from the moon's surface were by Neil Armstrong in 1969. Moonlight is actually sunlight reflecting off the moon's surface, and its brightness is about 400 times dimmer than direct sunlight. The moon has no seasons because its axis is tilted by only about 1.5 degrees, unlike Earth's 23.5 degrees. The moon's soil, called lunar regolith, contains tiny shards of glass created by meteoroid impacts. During a lunar eclipse, Earth's atmosphere bends sunlight, casting a reddish glow on the moon. The moon's gravity affects Earth's crust, causing slight land tides that are far less noticeable than ocean tides. Scientists have discovered that the moon has traces of helium-3, a potential fuel for future nuclear fusion energy. The moon's surface is covered with countless craters because it lacks an atmosphere to burn up incoming meteoroids. Ancient philosophers like Aristotle once believed the moon was perfectly smooth and flawless. The term gibbous in moon phases means the moon is more than half illuminated, but not yet full. The moon's orbital speed is approximately 682 kilometers per hour, Site 2, 288 miles per hour. Lunar Maria are named after Latin words for sea, because early astronomers thought they were filled with water. Apollo 15 astronaut David Scott performed a famous experiment on the moon, dropping a feather and hammer to prove Galileo's theory of gravity. The moon is slowly making Earth's days longer. Billions of years ago, a day on Earth was only about 18 hours long. The moon appears larger near the horizon due to a psychological phenomenon called the moon illusion. The moon has no air, so sound cannot travel on its surface. Astronauts rely on radios to communicate. The moon's surface area is about 37.9 million square kilometers, roughly the size of Africa. The coldest temperature ever recorded on the moon is about 408 Celsius for the foreseen refef in permanently shadowed craters. Ancient Babylonian astronomers accurately predicted lunar eclipses using detailed observations of the moon. Moon rocks brought back by Apollo astronauts revealed that the moon is about 4.5 billion years old, similar to Earth. The moon's orbit has a wobble known as libration, allowing us to see about 59% of its surface over time. Some cultures refer to the first full moon of the year as the wolf moon, inspired by howling wolves during winter. The moon has a very thin atmosphere called an exosphere, composed mostly of hydrogen, helium, and neon. The Soviet Luna 9 was the first spacecraft to soft land on the moon in 1966. The moon can influence human sleep patterns, with some studies suggesting people sleep less during a full moon. The word month is derived from the word moon, as ancient calendars were based on lunar cycles. The moon has inspired countless works of art, literature, and music, including Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. A full moon can appear 14% larger and 30% brighter when it's closest to Earth, known as a supermoon. The Apollo astronauts left a silicon disk on the moon containing goodwill messages from 73 countries. The moon has no plate tectonics, so its surface doesn't recycle itself like Earth's crust does. Some scientists theorize that the moon formed after a Mars-sized object collided with Earth about 4.5 billion years ago. The moon's area cover about 16% of its surface, mostly on the side facing Earth. The moon appears white or silver in the night sky, but its surface is actually a mix of gray and brown hues. The Japanese folklore tale of the rabbit on the moon suggests a rabbit lives on the moon, seen in the patterns of its surface. In some African cultures, eclipses are seen as conflicts between the sun and moon. Astronauts on the moon could see Earth fully illuminated in their sky, a full Earth view. Ancient Chinese astronomers were among the first to record solar and lunar eclipses accurately. The moon has been visited by spacecraft from the US, Soviet Union, China, and other nations. The moon's gravity creates a bulge in Earth's oceans, which is why high tides occur. Some people believe the moon's phases can affect human behavior, though scientific evidence is limited. The moon is tidally locked to Earth, meaning it takes the same time to rotate once as it does to orbit Earth. The oldest human-made object on the moon is the Soviet Union's Luna 2, which crashed in 1959. The moon has inspired myths about werewolves transforming under a full moon. The moon's gravitational pull is also responsible for slightly stretching Earth, creating land tides. The moon is the brightest object in our night sky, outshining all other celestial bodies, visible to the naked eye. Observing the moon was a key part of Galileo's challenge to the idea of a perfect universe. The moon once had volcanic activity, evidenced by ancient lava flows visible on its surface. NASA's Artemis program aims to return humans to the moon by the mid-2020s. The moon reflects Earthshine, a faint glow caused by sunlight reflecting off Earth onto the moon. The moon has no global weather systems, so its surface remains almost unchanged over billions of years.